Hey guys, so this is episode 6 of Married at First Sight season 19, titled Home Sweet Home. So I'm gonna do couple by couple again because I mentioned a little bit easier at the moment. But it does start off with day 8 of marriage and the couple's getting back to Austin and they're going to their shared apartment straight away. So basically, we kind of start off with um, Pat and Rhonda. Um, and sorry, moving the logo StreamYard to the other side. But so Rhonda brings her two dogs, Desi and Lucy, to the shared apartment. And I love their names, to be honest, to be quite honest. I think their names are cute. But Rhonda then, after like a day or two, takes Pat to see her house. I do think that her house looks really cool, and I think that um, it definitely encapsulates her. Um, and I wouldn't, like if we were ever friends, or had ever been friends, I would love to be at her house because I think it's very colorful and vibrant, and I think like I said, it totally is encapsulates her and all that. Um, and while they're there, Pat kind of um, brings up the fact that if he ever moves in with her, where will he put his stuff? And she pumps the brakes and is like, well, we're gonna table that conversation for another time because um, that is something that I don't necessarily want to talk about at the moment. Um, they're then get a bit they're the in this episode the couples end up getting um, a visit from one of the experts, and they are the third couple that we see get a visit from the experts, and the expert that they get seen by is second, or the second expert that we see. So is Dr. Pia, and so um, Rhonda explains that she feels that whenever she is trying to say something, Pat, excuse me, Pat isn't listening and tries to turn it back around to him. So Dr. P then tries to ask for his opinion on what he thinks Rhonda is saying. And um, not too long into him trying to explain how he feels, Dr. P sort of pauses him and says, well, what you're trying to say sounds like a political answer, which, Rhonda definitely agrees with. Um, so he then says, well, I'm a people pleaser. And he doesn't want to say anything because he feels that whatever he will try to say is bad and therefore end up hurting the person's feelings. Um, and he eventually does express how he feels. I didn't necessarily write down everything he said, but he does express how he feels, and Rhonda ends up getting defensive about it. Um, so Dr. P is like, well, can you see how his fears just literally came true? Like he tried to express how he felt, and then you took that as as a personal attack, and they therefore got defensive. So what's the step? I mean, unfortunately, um, you know, she said something at the end of it all, at the end of the episode that I'll kind of get into in a second. But he explains, well, look, your person. Well, she says, people in the past have told her that she has this like boisterous personality, and she's this like lively person, but um, from what I could understand, what she said was that as a result, they've always said something along the lines of, well, um, basically, your personality is used as a weapon against them. I mean, maybe I'm misinterpreting that, but that's what it sounds like. Um, because somehow they're like her personality ends up being a weapon against it. Like it just didn't quite all the way make sense. But that is what it seemed like she was trying to say. That's how she felt in past relationships. And when he started saying, "Well, the your personality is very boisterous," um, and uh, it's really an asset to you. Like it's really an asset for you because it helps you with your career, and it's helped you raise your kids, and it's nothing to really be um, ashamed about. So um, when it's all said and done, she says that she needs time because she still feels unsafe because of what he has said, and um, so she needs time to like feel safe. So Dr. P leaves, and then when she ends up going to walk her dogs, her two dogs, and when she's out, walking her dogs, she says she thinks the reason he doesn't say anything to her is because he thinks every time he tries to talk to her, he will trigger and upset her. And to be quite honest, it kind of does look like that, where every single time he does try to say something to her, he ends up triggering her. Like I understand, in episode what 3, when they were on the honeymoon and he had, you know, brought it back around to him, I could see how that would be um, rather annoying, because I'm trying to tell you about myself and you keep bringing it back to you. Like, can you not? Can you let me let me talk about myself for a minute? And because every time you try to talk, you go on a, a filibuster to try to talk about yourself. Like, so I understood that part. Um, but when in episode 5, when they were still on the honeymoon, she and Brittany had gone off by themselves to talk, and she had stated to Brittany that um, she had stated to Brittany that um, you know uh, they had talked about when their last relationship was, and she was concerned about the fact that he had only been single for 6 months before going into the process. So he had, according to her, he had said, I felt judged and hurt by your reaction. And um and so she said, well, I don't want to be with a sensitive man, a very sensitive man who's very insecure. And maybe hearing them talk with Dr. Pia puts it into perspective that he was actually trying to share, like, explain, like, give his opinion of what he was feeling, and here you are getting upset and calling him insecure. I mean, he didn't. I mean, granted, he did say he felt insecure, but it felt like judgment from her too. So I mean, at the end of the day, like there might be some truth to that. There might be some truth to the fact that you might get easily triggered all the time. Same with Brittany, which I'll get into next because they're the actual next couple that I wanted to talk about. But yeah, so there. I mean, as much as a good communicator, I think she is, and probably the best communicator of the entire cast. At the end, on the other side, I'm starting to understand him a little bit better, um, because he felt safe enough to do it because there was a third party in the room who could interpret what he's saying and try to relay it to Rhonda. So, I mean, I don't know. We'll see if things get any better between the two in episode 7, um, and all that. But anyway, so the next couple that I wanted to talk about is Brittany and Will. So um, eventually, Brittany, asks that they forget Panama because and make it that so that Panama never happened because uh, she's at first says it's a nightmare, but then backtracks and says, it wasn't entirely a nightmare. Um, it's just that the night before, like last night they were in Panama, there was yet another disagreement, and we see a flashback of them explaining that she heard something completely different than what he had stated. Um, so Brittany then takes Will to her house, and she is upset again because he's not jumping for joy at her house. Um, and I and maybe I missed it entirely, but I didn't understand like why she had gotten upset, like because at that point I was like, well, maybe he's just trying to take everything in about her house. And it wasn't until when they were talking with Dr. or Pastor Cal that I kind of understood what her problem was. But even so, I'm starting to think that she is overly upset. Like she like takes everything as a rejection. And it's just like this as a fearful avoider myself, like and who heavily leans into the whole dismissive part, the whole emotions thing is just irritates me. If everything you say, or if everything I do makes you hyper emotional, I'm gonna want to shut down too. I mean, I'm trying to actively work on it. It's just if everything you say is always going to be like, or if everything I say or do is going to be taking it as overly emotional, I'm not going to want to deal with you because every day is going to be something with you, like, or just about every day is going to be feel like something with you, and unfortunately, and I hate to say this, however, I can see why perhaps men never wanted to take or get to know her and date her after 3 months or for longer than 3 months, because it seems like everything someone says or does is a trigger for her, and she gets hyper emotional about it. And I mean, while I do understand the whole um well, I do understand the whole give me explicit instructions part, because I'm like that very much in my work life, and I think even for my everyday life too, and to some extent. And so I understand all of that. If everything someone says or does is going to get you triggered and going to get you extremely emotional, I'm going to be afraid to say anything to you because then like I can never say anything because it's gonna trigger you from some past relationship, and like then I'm gonna be walking on eggshells. So yeah, like uh, uh, so unfortunately, I can kind of maybe see why you know they like the guys in her life for the last 10 years um never wanted to move past 3 months with her because it's exhausting. It is exhausting. I mean, there's obviously, yes, you're gonna have to be vulnerable and you're gonna have to open up and speak your mind and all of that. And I'm never gonna say you shouldn't. However, if everything is gonna trigger you, then I'm like I said, I'm gonna walk on eggshells, and I just don't want to do that. So, um, but while they're still at the house, Will picks up on her being upset, although she doesn't tell him why. Which again, this is brought up later when they're talking with Pastor Cal. But um, he also says, "Well, she claims to be such a great communicator, but isn't telling him what's wrong." Which, again, unfortunately, I agree with Will on this. Lee, you're saying that you're this master communicator and you can communicate extremely well, but here you are not telling me anything. I'm not like nobody's a mind reader. So um, when Pastor Cal comes to visit, they sit on the couch and are like an ocean away from each other, essentially. So he asks them how things were going, and they say, well, there's ups and downs. But when Pastor Cal is like, well, what are the ups in the relationship? They both end up being dead ass silent. Um, so she explains to Pastor Cal that she was excited for him to see her house because she's never done that before, and she wanted to show it off because she's worked so hard to get her house. Um, and she explains he showed zero emotion to her house as a whole, but the moment that she was showing that she was going to bring a lot of stuff to the share apartment, he had feelings that were rather negative, and she felt like he was judging her for bringing quote unquote a hell of a lot of stuff. Um, so Pastor Cal, then explains to Will, um, she wants you to care about anything she cares about. Um, like show interest in what she's interested in, um, and to engage with her. Um, and if you don't engage with her at all, she's gonna be on the assumption that you don't care about her at all. But then he also then flips it to her and says, "Well, Will cannot read your mind, so you're gonna have to speak up and tell him, hey, like, look, I need something other than nonchalantness. Sorry." Um, so she explains, like, in her mind, she doesn't want him to think there's always something wrong. And the thing is, unfortunately, there's always pretty much since like episode 3, there seems to always be something wrong though. Always. It's like that clip of that guy saying, "I don't want peace, I want problems always." Shout out to Little Black Book for showing me that clip. But um, you know, it does always seem like there's something wrong on her end. And so it's just like, I mean, unfortunately, I mean, I also hate to say that, but she then also says that she doesn't want him to respond negatively, or she doesn't want him to not have a reaction at all, which I will agree with her that he always seems to have never have a reaction. He never is able to pinpoint his feelings at all and explain them, which is annoying as well. Like, if you can never give me any sort of emotion, like, that you have, then what am I doing here? But um, she expresses that she doesn't know where she stands with him at all, and she knows that there are things that have bothered him. When she asks, she doesn't get literally any response. So Pascal's like, "Well, is there something that bothers you about her?" And he brings up the fact that the sex situation, um, and he was like, "Well, I tried to give her some space because I saw that she was getting emotional, and I just wanted her to be able to have the space to be able to calm down and um, relax and all that." But she's like, "Look, I didn't want space. What I wanted you to do was I wanted you to say, 'Hey, it's okay. I got you. This is not me, um, really just not caring about you at all.'" So, I mean, hopefully from now on, this doesn't become a cyclical thing anymore, where he is not giving anything, he's nonchalant, and she gets triggered by every little thing. Hopefully, but you know, we'll see. The next couple that we pretty much see is Belinda and Chad. Um, Belinda asks if Chad's dog, sleeps in the bed. He says no. And uh and all that's like the first thing that we hear about them, is them talking about, where pets sleep and all that stuff. But um, you know, uh a few days later, her dog is in the house, and or the apartment, and every single time Chad comes out of a room and into another room, it barks. And I was like, I know you freaking lying. I know you effing lying. Talking about a dog is barking every time I even sneeze, essentially. I'm like, what? What? I mean, I already have sensory issues with like loud noises. So if I hear a loud noise, I end up jumping, and it's like because it just sets me on edge, and I hate that. So dogs barking is not a soft sound. It's not. It's just not a soft sound. Um, and if every single time I try to get up and go do something, the freaking dog is barking, I'm gonna want to put it outside and have it far, far away from me, because what the hell are you talking about? The dog is gonna bark every time I try to take a step somewhere in another room. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? And honestly, that's not most of it is not on the dog. Most of it's on Belinda, because she allows the freaking dog to do that. Um, so I'm just like, well, what the hell? Like, what am I even doing at this point? Um, and it's honestly highly disrespectful and annoying, because I can't get any peace. Like, I mean, every single time I try to go into another room from like another room, I'm gonna hear a dog barking. Like, what are you talking about? And like I said, she literally just allows the dog to do that every single time. And at that point, I'm just like, well, what the hell are you doing? Uh, You're not training that dog worth a damn. And I'm like, I'm tired. Like, what? Because the only reason your dog is allowed to get away with doing that shit is because you allow it. Um, so I mean, And honestly, at this point, I think it will be hard for her dog to stop doing that because you never trained it to not do that. Like it's one thing if your dog barks at um and that's one thing when your dog barks at um a person knocking on the door or ringing the doorbell, and they're trying to quote unquote protect the house. I mean, I still think that's annoying as hell, but I mean, to some degree, I understand it. But if all I'm doing is literally moving from, say, the bedroom to the living room, and your dog barks at me, that to me tells me that your dog views me as a fucking threat, and it's like half a step away from, or half a second away from chomping on my arm or my leg because it, it, it wasn't expecting me to fucking move. Like what that? Like what? Come on, that's ridiculous. That's literally fucking ridiculous to me. Anyway, so the last thing that we see of them is that they go on an archery date. Um, and that's really all I have for them as far as what goes on with them. They didn't get an expert visit. I'm assuming that's going to be. Uh, I'm assuming that's going to be for next episode, because both them and Jalen and Josh didn't get an expert visit this episode. So we'll see if that is something that happens in episode 7. But the next couple that we could sort of see is Derek and Megan. So, in their shared apartment, Derek is saying that he cleans with white vinegar, and Megan is not happy about that because she doesn't like the smell of it. Um, so, in the same conversation, Megan says that her dog sleeps in the bed with Megan. And the only time that her dog Zoe sleeps in her dog bed is when Megan's not there. The morning after they moved into the shared apartment, Derek is on a walk saying that he didn't sleep very well the night before because in the middle of the night, Zoe was barking um, for a little bit, and um, Zoe also slept on his side of the bed, so which made it uncomfortable to sleep because he's used to sleeping in a certain way. Um, and I was like, well, I figured that he didn't really like the fact that Megan said that Zoe sleeps in the bed because he cleared his throat but didn't really say anything. At least from what we saw, that he didn't say anything. So I personally think that, I mean, despite what he says later when Pastor Cal comes to visit, you know, he, I still don't think that he really cares for Zoe sleeping in the bed, but that's just my personal opinion. Um, Back in the apartment, we see Megan sitting on the bed, and Derek sitting on the couch. So Megan comes over, sits on the couch with him, and while he started to try to tell him or tell her what's wrong, she tries to interrupt, and he's like, "No, let me finish." And I agree with that. It's like, I'm starting to try to tell you what is wrong, and you're already starting to try to interrupt me. Like, let me start the plane, get it in the air, and land my plane because you're asking me what's wrong, and I'm trying to tell you, and you're interrupting me right when I'm starting to talk. So let me talk. So yeah, Megan kind of irritates me. I'm just like, ugh, ugh. Um, so he starts telling her, he wasn't expecting her to ask him to walk her dog alone. He thought that they would walk Zoe together, which I honestly don't fault him for because at the end of the day, that's her dog that she got before they even ever met. So I understand. Like I will help you walk your dog as long as you are there too, but I'm not gonna walk your responsibility by myself. Because at the end of the day, you're the one who got the dog, not me. And in this case, Megan got the dog, not Derek. So, um, because if he wanted a dog, he would have gotten one before going into the process, but he didn't. So why is it his responsibility to walk a dog he didn't get? And honestly, it would be one thing if he volunteered himself, like if he said that he wanted to do it himself, but he didn't. She basically volunteered him as tribute, and it's like, well, what? Like, no, which is something that she even brought up, in that same conversation, is that, well, I want you to want to do it yourself. Like, well, that's the thing. It's like you didn't allow him to want to do it by himself. You just said go walk the dog because she needs to be walked. You didn't give him a choice to do it, whether or not he wanted to do it. So that's the issue that I think he was having, and why what I think is the problem with, you know everything that comes to Zoe, is that you just laid down the law and said, well, she's gonna sleep in the bed, because I don't care if she sleeps in the bed, and if she wants to sleep in the bed, she can sleep in the bed. You didn't ask him if it was okay, and whether or not he would allow it. You didn't. So I mean, she feels like she compromises too, whereas he doesn't think so. So he asks her, like, what things do you compromise? And she brings up, um the cleaning with white vinegar, which, okay, a fair conversation, a fair point. um I just also think that that's not much of a fair comparison, because at the end of the day, she's he's having to compromise a lot with the dog, because he has to walk the dog by himself. He has to allow her to sleep in the bed, and sleep on on his side of the bed, where he's uncomfortable and having to contort himself because the dog is sleeping some type of way. So that's a lot of adjustment. Like, whereas cleaning with a certain, I mean, if it's a sensory issue where it overpowers you, and so, because I also kind of get, um, sensory issues with, uh, um, I don't want to say pungent smells, but something that's overpowering, in smell, I tend to get like a headache. So if that's the case, then okay, that's one thing. But you didn't say that. You just said you didn't like the smell. Like, I don't know, but, um, and she says, well, I feel like you're using all these things that you don't like about what Zoe does, or what I want you to do for Zoe, against me. Well, no, that's not necessarily true. Like, it's a valid concern, because at the end of the day, he has to adjust to life with a dog, something that he didn't sign up for before going into this process. So at the end of the day, that's a huger sacrifice and compromise on his part than cleaning with white vinegar. Um, so here she is yet again shutting down and being defensive for him simply stating something that he's not used to. I mean, um, and honestly, they sort of had, like, right before Pastor Cal comes, they kind of bring up good points, where, I agree with Megan on the one hand that Derek needs to not let something fester, and actually bring up his concerns in the moment, because in a way I can kind of see how, for her, she's being ambushed, because he's bringing it up later instead of in the moment. So I can understand that in that aspect, because no one likes to feel, well, why did you just say something before, and why did you wait? But on the other hand, I do agree with him too, that, um she shouldn't push things off onto him without bringing it like bringing it up before. Like, don't wait to bring something up. Like, just as much as you're accusing him of pushing things off and not voicing his concerns, well, you're pushing things off and asking him to do things that he didn't necessarily sign up for. And she shouldn't be um, she shouldn't be not she shouldn't not allow him to voice his concerns and others, like, concerning the dog. Like, the dog is sleeping in the bed. Like, you just laid down the law and said, well, she's going to sleep in the bed. Like, you didn't even allow room for him to, discuss it with her and compromise and come to some solution. Like, hey, well, she can sleep in the bed X amount of times a week. Say she can sleep in the bed Friday and Saturday nights. But Sunday night through Thursday night, she can't sleep in the bed because I gotta get up get up for work in the morning. I need a good night's sleep. And if she's on my side of the bed and sleeping any old type of way, I'm gonna be contorting myself. I'm not gonna have a good night's sleep. So maybe if he had been able to maybe say that, if that's what he would like to compromise on, okay. But she just laid down the law and said, well, she's gonna sleep in the bed no matter what, because I don't care, and if she wants to, then she can. So anyway, um, Pastor Cal then comes to do a check in with them, and he brings up a good point that silence is, communication, and that's what Megan does. That she shuts down and goes silent, and uh, and at that point he won't be able to reach her and have a discussion. Um, she brings up the fact that she feels he's aloof with Zoe, um, to which he says, "Well, if you feel that way, just say it." But she's perceiving that as a harsh tone, which I can kind of see how that was um, harsh in a way. So it sounded dismissive. I'm not gonna lie, it kind of did. So. Um, so Pastor Cal explains, you went into a rebuttal despite the decibels of your voice not going up in octaves and all that. So, and his voice was a normal speaking voice. So they just need to work on, um, you know, the wording choice into which they use. Um, Now, the last couple, Josh and Jalen. Um, the only thing of note is that Jalen brings Josh to her spin cycle job, and she makes a comment stating that basically her spin cycle job is her entire personality. And I'm sitting there thinking, Jalen, you're more than just a spin cycle instructor. You're more than just that. Um, and if that's all you are, then because it's to me, it's like when a woman says that her whole life is being a mother. Like, your whole life is not just being a mom. It's not. It just isn't. So, I mean, hopefully that's not the only thing that she has for a personality. Um, but we'll see what more holds for them in episode 7. But basically that's all I had for this season, or for this episode in particular. And um, I'll try to watch episode 7 and recap it as quickly as I can by the end of the day, just because I have a doctor's appointment that I need to go to um, later on in the day, and I want to get it done and upload it before I leave. But um, yeah, that's basically all I had for episode 6. let me know what you guys think of all the couples down below. And if you have a different view of any of the couples I've talked about so far, um, or if you had similar views on them, or something that I just didn't think of. But um, like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.